Welcome to our series, Moving America Forward. Each week we'll be focusing on America's entrepreneurs as they take us to new roads, new opportunities, new ways to fill the gaps left by today's failing companies. Our series will be looking at that and a lot more. So come with me and watch as the entrepreneurs of our nation move into the future.
And I'm Doug Llewelyn here in our studios in Los Angeles with our guest today, who's the Executive Director of the Pacific Disaster Center, which is located in Kihei, Hawaii. I'd like you to meet him now. His name is Ray Shirkhodai. Ray, welcome. Nice to have you with us.
Thank you. My pleasure.
You know, before we get into this really interesting story, I want to point out that a short while ago you had a chance to answer some questions from William Shatner. Let's take a look at a brief portion of that now and see how it went. Okay? Let's watch.
I know that you're deeply involved in the technology field, but what are some of your advancements and how is it helpful to move America forward?
Mr. Shatner, when a devastating natural disaster strikes, it is often seconds, if not fractions of a second, that can be the difference between life and death. Our technology helps first responders, governments, and the general public to get the critical information they need to better prepare for and react quickly to hazards, helping to prevent catastrophic loss of life. In addition, we work with nations all over the world to ensure that they're taking the necessary steps to be prepared before disasters occur. And that, Mr. Shatner, is how we are helping to move America forward.
You know, that's an amazing story that you have to tell. Tell me a little bit about your background and how all of this came to be.
Well, I'm a software engineer by training, so I have some software development background. And about 13, 14 years ago, I went to head the information technology department of the Pacific Disaster Center. So we started basically taking some of the research and applications that were developed and integrating it into a full-fledged internet-based application for disaster management and disaster risk reduction purposes. So I became the executive director about 7 years ago.
Define for me or explain to me what the Pacific Disaster Center actually does.
Well, disaster information is provided by a number of different agencies. So what we do, we take disaster and sensor information, integrated with various models to tell you how bad, for instance, certain disasters are, and some non-disaster related information like transportation, population density, where your critical infrastructures are, so that once a disaster occurs, the information is readily available and understandable for decision makers that have to respond to and or take decisions about disaster relief operations.
You know, it's interesting. The name says Pacific Disaster, but actually the information you're compiling spans the globe, doesn't it?
That is correct, actually. It started in the Pacific. Our center is about 20 years old now, but at about 2006 we realized that a lot of what we did was applicable and manageable globally, so we started actually covering global disasters.
I need to ask you, is the fact that you're located in Hawaii actually important to what you do?
It is. Our center was originated actually after Hurricane Iniki. And at a time, the senator from Hawaii thought that there were a number of capabilities that could be used, that government had, that could be used to better prepare disaster managers about pending hazards. And that's how our center started. It's across the street, literally from a supercomputer. So if there's a computing need and whatnot, could be utilized. So that's the significance of it, essentially.
All right, well, let's get into this. Explain to me, or show me, we have a laptop here, demonstrate how this information works.
Okay. Well, in here, actually, I'm showing the internet-based application. And as you can see, in here, there are a number of disasters that are, or hazards that are occurring globally.
This is right now, real time.
This is right now, real time. All the information gets updated in real time or near real time. And particularly, for instance, if you look at that tropical storm, it's going pretty close to Guam. So by just one look, and this map is interactive, so you can actually zoom into that area and see where the expected damages may be. I'm now showing actually expected rainfall from this tropical storm. So given that a projected path for a storm, you can actually see whether or which islands may be impacted, how many people live there, what are the critical infrastructure that may be on the way of the storm. This is before the storm hits, obviously, so you can better prepare for it, essentially.
So based on past performance and information, you're really getting a projection of what is going to happen.
Correct. The application brings in not only observational data, which is what is happening right now, but it does have some modeling capabilities in a lot of cases to try to project into the future as to how likely the impacts from certain disasters may be.
And looking at that screen, can you tell the difference between the various kinds of disasters? Because I know you deal with earthquakes, tsunamis, hurricanes, the whole ball of wax. Can you tell by looking there what is what?
Absolutely. Each of these icons, so tropical storms, for instance, are depicted by a different icon than a major earthquake or a volcanic eruption, or in this case, wildfires and so on. So each of the disasters do have different icons associated with it. Different colors also mean how severe may they be.
Who's interested in all of this information?
Well, predominantly, essentially, national governments, a lot of the non-governmental organizations that get involved with disaster response and relief operation, military, United Nations, so anyone who really plays a role in responding to disasters and or preparing for those. So planners, a lot of planners, for instance, take note of this, because if you know where general hazards happen, well, you can avoid building critical infrastructure or housing, for instance, in that area. However, I think a lot of this information is also really useful for general public. And that's why we actually have a similar application for general public over the internet as well as mobile devices.
I was just going to say this. Now, what we're looking at, is this specific picture image available to the public at large, or is this a special
Absolutely.
category?
This very platform actually is available via our website. And actually, if you have a mobile device, you can download a smaller version of this into the mobile devices that show you the basic information about hazards going around.
Well, it's interesting. You do have a mobile, you have an iPad there too, right? You could show us a little bit on that. I'll hold that up.
Sure. If I hold this up, actually, you can see that the same icons and information is being made available, globally. Again, if
looks like there's a lot going on around the world right now.
There always is. There always
It's always something showing up.
There's always something actually going on around the globe.
And do other governments cooperate in this? I mean, how many countries have adopted this technology?
Well, we have really two sets of activities. One is the global application that we have that's open. The research and development for this originally was paid for by the government. So this capability essentially is available to general public, to all the international community essentially that's involved with disaster management or disaster management professionals. We also, because of the success we've had, we also get engaged with other national governments that want the same capabilities, but they want to feed the system their own local data, local hazard data, as well as perhaps detailed infrastructure data. In those cases, we work with those governments to basically install the software and then train them on how they can put their own information in there and use the application.
What if a country doesn't have really sophisticated satellite imagery available?
Well, that's the beauty of actually what we're, the open platform, because the open platform is used and it doesn't really matter who collected the imagery. In fact, in case of large disasters, United Nations tasks satellites and they do provide imagery that we put into the platform. So say if you happen to be in Vietnam and Vietnam does not have its own satellites, they can actually use this system to see the latest imagery.
And I know you've actually created an app for the iPhone, the iPad. Is that what you were using when you showed us the iPad image?
That is, and actually that, for general public, actually, that has been a huge success. We've had over 1.5 million downloads globally So it's a pretty good application to keep the general public essentially informed, not only about events, but what they might expect really from these large events.
You know, you mentioned to William Shatner, you also help and consult with other countries in the preparation for disasters and things of that nature. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, we actually have engaged, for instance, with Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia, Association of Southeast Asian Nations. They all have adapted this platform.
Right.
And what we do, we basically engage with them to understand what is it that they need and what is it that they have. Then we perform a gap analysis and offer them consultancy, solution. Naturally we do install our software over there, but then we help them customize it for their own need and then train their personnel. These engagements, because they're at national level, often are a year and a half or 2 years engagement.
Wow.
To really build the capacity, the local capacity to do this well.
Tell me about the team you have in Hawaii that's working on this. It never stops. It goes on and on all the time, right? Around
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's actually one of our uniqueness. We have wonderful staff, and we are, what makes us really unique is that we're truly an integrated multidisciplinarian. So we have software engineers that write the code and prepare the platform and whatnot, but we also have geospatial data analysts for bringing the mapping components in. We do have scientists in physical sciences for modeling, social scientists for risk assessment, disaster managers to really help define how do you navigate, how do you bring all of these different technologies and disciplines for betterment of the decision-making process. Yes, a lot of good people.
It's an amazing story you have to tell, Ray. Thank you very much for being here to tell us all about the Pacific Disaster Center in Hawaii.
Thank you.
Great work.
Thank you very much.
Now it is my honor to present this prestigious award to Ray Shirkhodai, the Executive Director of the Pacific Disaster Center in Kihei, Hawaii, for the outstanding work his firm is doing to help keep moving America forward. Ray, it's a pleasure to give this to you. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I just want to take a moment and thank our wonderful and dedicated staff who work around the clock, without whom this would not be possible. So thank you very much.
You're so welcome.